Hey everyone. Um Happy Monday to you all. Um I so the live I did earlier was about those. I just uploaded it, but it actually talks about my actually songs. I will say that define for me that divine basically define history at its level. Like, that's the thing within war, the big topic of war. I think the best thing that comes out of war is the music that people create. And for me, one of those songs I will say that always carries a place in my heart is "Walking on a Thin Line." That song is a Huey Lewis talks about the Vietnam War in that song. The lyrics are probably, I mean, that and "Born in the USA" by Bruce Springsteen, which is, I feel like, a pretty well known song. I feel like that song is played a lot more compared to "Walking on a Thin Line." Um, I will say both great songs, but "Walking on a Thin Line" I feel like doesn't get played as often as "Born in the USA." Um, and that's not an opinion, that is a fact. Because "Born in the USA" is often played a lot. Actually, you know what? Let's look up how many times has "Born" what's "Born" in the USA played on radio. So, while the exact total of number of radio plays for Bruce Springsteen "Born in the USA" is not publicly tracked by a single source, it has been played hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of times since its 1984 release. Is a top 10 single from a 30 million copy selling album. It has remained a staple of classic rock and pop radio for over 4 decades. But it says, as far as this album, it was a cultural impact. It was the best selling album of 1985. So, but the album "Born in the USA" was the best selling album that Bruce Springsteen has ever done. I would say for me, the two best Bruce Springsteen albums are this one and Nebraska. Nebraska, especially. Like, that was a really, I will say, well published and created album. And then I want to look up how many times has Walking on a Thin Line on a thin line. But Walking on a Thin Line by Huey Lewis and the News, released in 1984, from the Sports album, peaked at number 16 on the Billboard Top Rock Tracks and charted number 18 on the Billboard Hot 100. While its total radio play count isn't publicly tailed, it was a staple on both AM and FM radio during 1984. But during 1984, it was frequently played, with some commenters describing it as being played constantly at the time. Ever since then, though, like, it's one of those songs that was played at its peak, but even it said, what was it, Born in the USA has been, I mean, still a song that is overplayed. But I will say, Walking on a Thin Line is definitely for me, it's a direct approach of what the Vietnam War really was about. Really, like, how people that had PTSD, that came back from the war, but also were fighting the war. But I actually want to break down the lyrics for you all, because this song, as I said, is probably my top number one song that talks about a war and goes so in depth with a war such as the Vietnam War. But the thing is, it talks about the struggle of Vietnam War veterans dealing with PTSD and trying to return great into society. But it portrays them as angry, alienated freaks forgotten by the public. But it actually sounds like it's a song that has to do with after the events of the Vietnam War, when veterans come home and they're trying to reintegrate into society. The fact that they were forgotten by the public. But Huey Lewis actually sang the demo for the song, but it was written by Kevin Wells and Andre Pezis. But part of the lyrics, so breaking this song down from what I'm seeing here, PTSD and post war trauma. As I said, that's really the start of the song, but it describes a soldier's inability to escape the horrors of war, featuring lines like blinded by a memory and angry all the time. So blinded by a memory meaning you have flashbacks throughout the war. And then the fact where the alienation and misunderstanding comes in states the song explores the harsh reality of returning vets labeled as freaks and struggling to fit in with civilian life. And in the song there's a lyric that says the boy next door. So they note that basically they note so labeled as freaks is a lyric is being called freaks and struggling to fit in. So labeled as freaks and struggling to fit in with civilian life. So struggling to fit in with civilian life, the lyric for that is the boy next door. And then when society doesn't um when society doesn't when society ignores, that's where the lyric comes in saying so easy to ignore, but that's the society ignoring from who's come back from Vietnam. And then the thin line meaning refers to the delicate balance between sanity and madness, oral life and death, that these veterans continue to walk long after leaving the front line.